Hi everyone! In this video I want to talk about my favorite paper in coloring books because I am sure that good paper is a half of success of nicely colored picture. And my favorite paper is in the books by Blue Angel Publishers. They create books by Jasmine Beckett Griffith and also books by Ryan Phelan about dragons and book by Josephine Wall. For me, this paper is absolutely perfect. I prefer to color on the warm white or off-white paper, not cold white, and I love tools of the paper here. Maybe it's not the thickest paper, but tooth is absolutely amazing. I tried to work on this paper with various pencils brand, from polychromos to Prismacolors, and they all work very well. Even cheaper brands like Kohinoor Mondeluz can be used especially for covering backgrounds, but I also used here watercolors and it's perfect for watercolors also. It watercolors don't bleed through and it's not so important because pictures are almost one-sided, but still I am glad when I don't have stains on the other side. And watercolor pigment spreads very well on the surface of the paper and you're able both to do layering with watercolors to create glazing, but also you're able to delete excessive watercolor pigment with clear brush with clear water if you made a mistake, which is quite often for me because I am just a beginner and surface of the paper remains undamaged. Probably my main reason why I enjoy working on this paper so much is because of how my Prismacolor pencils behave on it. I am able to cover paper without leaving white spots with just one or maximum two layers of pigment, and I really love that when I color you can see very smooth coverage without visible pencil strokes, and such tooth of paper helps me to create interesting effects like halo, like shining effects, which is very important when you color in books with fantasy designs. Next paper in my list is book in Dutch editions of Hanna Karlzon and Maria Trolle, so books by mass publishers. When I first received Dutch books, I was so surprised how heavy they are and how thick is this paper. I'm still surprised every time when I flip through this book. I always feel like I flip through two pages in one time. Paper is very heavy, it has very pleasant warm white color and tooth of the paper is also very good. So here paper again is suitable for all mediums, from watercolors to all pencil brands. Next, I really love paper in this artist edition of the Dream Dancers by Lenka Filonenko. Pictures are one-sided, and in this book I already tested probably all mediums: watercolors, acrylic paints, alcohol-based markers, pencils from Prismacolors and Polychromoses to cheaper brands like Blue Widow or like Arteza pencils, and they all behave really well. On this page you can see that there are no visible pencil strokes, but I colored this portrait using Black Widow, which are budget pencils, and I am very happy how they mixed on this paper. Here I used a lot of mediums from watercolors and pearlescent watercolors for the background, and watercolor pigment also spreads very well, but also I used alcohol-based markers and they also mixed really well on this paper. So I highly recommend this paper. It's great and it definitely doesn't limit you in your choice of mediums. I enjoy working on this paper so much. I even don't iron pages in this book, even after I use watercolors or acrylic paints or gouache paints, because paper is so thick that it flattens itself after I close my book. Next paper in my list will be from editions of Good Wives and Various, and it's paper in this Escape series, Escape to Oz, Escape to Shakespeare's World, and I think that similar paper is in Escape to Wonderland. I heard that recently they created next edition of the same books but printed on different paper which is whiter. But I have early editions and I really enjoy working on this paper. First of all, I really appreciate that I can work with my Derwent color softs here, and they layer very well, they cover paper very well, and you probably know if you own color softs that they are quite demanding to the paper quality. I also worked with watercolors here, and again pigment of uh, watercolors spread very well here without leaving stains, without absorbing into surface of the paper very quickly. So paper is perfect for all water-based mediums. On this page I worked with neocolors and you can see how smooth is coverage, again without visible stains. So I was able to work and to layer pigment. This spread colored completely with watercolors only on the fish I added a little bit of pencils, but buildings and sky they all are colored with watercolors only, and again nothing was bleeding through on the page on the back. And I think that for such a small price, which this book cost on Book Depository, paper is perfect. Unicorn was colored with Inktense pencils and Dragon was colored with Color Softs, and as I said, paper is perfect for all pencil brands. I don't have any uh, problems with any pencils. Here I used acrylic paint for the background and here I used granulating watercolors, and again I was able to create glazing and to apply multiple layers on the background. And I really love how Prismacolors mixed on the birds, so I was able to create interesting effects on the wings. So paper in this Escape series is definitely in my top list. Next, let's talk about paper in Japanese editions of Kanoko Egusa. I can't say that this paper is perfect because if for Prismacolors it's absolutely amazing, and I also worked here with watercolors and neocolors and paper also behaved very well, but on this page I tested my polychromases and I must say that I don't like how polychromases behaved here. I didn't enjoy it at all, and in the middle of coloring this picture I switched back to Prismacolors. So the carpet and all animals are colored with Prismacolors, and so far Prismacolors and Derwent drawings are my favorite mediums for this book. But I'm also very happy that if I want, I can color backgrounds using watercolors. So far I did probably 2 or 3 watercolor backgrounds, and on the first picture I applied watercolors very gently, But on the second, I was much more confident, and I didn't have any problems. Reason why I decided to include this paper in my top list is because of the backgrounds. Usually I hate to cover backgrounds with pencils, even with such soft pencils like Prismacolors. But on this paper, for me, it's pure joy. I love how my Prismacolors mixes here. I think that paper is a huge helper here. I created a lot of backgrounds where the whole background is covered by Prismacolors, and again I was able to cover paper with just one layer without visible pencil strokes and mostly without my blender or burnisher. So paper and Prismacolors are perfect together, but not so perfect if you prefer to use polychromoses. And the last books in my list of universal papers is this paper by Pictura. I can't say that I colored a lot in these books, and it's a shame. It's nice that I had to look at these books because now I want to color them. But paper here is very thick. It's like a cardstock, and you definitely can use watercolors and pencil brands because tooth of paper is also very good. Now let's talk about good paper, but probably more suitable for watercolors. All these books were made by the same publisher, but paper is slightly different. In the search of the light bulb buckler, paper is quite thick, but it less textured comparing to the books by Jade Gideon. So here it's easier to work both with watercolors and with pencil brands. For me, it's a usual way to work here. First to do background with watercolors or with gouache paints, and then I work with details using pencils. Due to this thickness of paper and its texture, it's very easy to create beautiful color gradients with watercolors. I really love this texture, these stains which you can create. I think that this texture suits very well the idea of steampunk book. But when I work with pencils and with harder pencils like color softs or with softer pencils like Prismacolors, I would recommend to use blender in order to get better coverage and in order to get rid of white spots. Paper in the books by Jade Gideon is almost perfect example of real watercolor paper. It has texture similar to the texture of cold press watercolor paper, so it's very easy to work with mediums like neocolors, like watercolors, like Inktense pencils. You will be able to layer to create glazing. You will be able to remove watercolor pigment. Paper doesn't absorb watercolor for quite a long time, so you will be able to spread pigment on the paper, and it's important because for beginner it's important to be able to work slowly. When you are not confident in your watercolor skills, it's not convenient to work when paper absorbs pigment and water very quickly. So for watercolors, for practicing your skills, these books are perfect. But as paper is quite textured, it's slightly harder to work with colored pencils. For me, it's good because it helps me to get out of my comfort zone. When I know that I can't work with colored pencils, it helps me to try something new with my watercolors. I try to work even on details with watercolors or with Inktense. So if you want perfect book for practicing your watercolor skills, you definitely have to look at these books. They are extremely heavy because, as I said, paper is very, very thick. All these books, they are of very high quality, but sometimes they also can be a little bit pricey. So in the end of this video, I decided to include last item like a perfect balance between price and very decent quality of paper. I think that you all are familiar with paper in Creative Heaven. Books has quite reasonable prices, and of course paper isn't the thickest, but still I practice here almost everything in my art supply stash. I used ink tenses, I used neocolors, I used alcohol-based markers, I used watercolors, but with medium amount of water. But for creating first layer to create underpaint, it's quite suitable. I used acrylic paint, I used gouache paint, and I really love to work on this paper because it has very nice tools in my opinion, both with Prismacolors and polychromoses. My favorite medium is Prismacolors. Again, I love that I can work in my quick way, so I can cover paper with just one layer of pencils, and I can cover paper even without using a blender, but in the same time I can draw some small details like this small texture, wooden texture on small elements. So I really love this paper, and I appreciate that for such a moderate price you can get such a decent quality. I would say that if books by Selina Fenwick were printed on similar paper, I would never complain on their quality. So I love paper in Creative Heaven, and it's a good example that even for a moderate price you can get decent paper where you can use various art supplies. Well, I thank you for listening to my opinion about best paper on which I enjoy working the best, because for me paper is a huge helper in creating nice pictures. Of course, I have in my collection other books with quite thick paper, like books by Gugeli or Mick Filbert or Momo Girl, but shame on me, but I hadn't started to color in these books yet, so I can't give you my opinion about them. Probably in the end of the year, if I finally start to color in these wonderful books, I will create similar video if my opinion about best paper is changed. But for now, I highly recommend you to test paper in Escapes series or in books by Blue Angel publishers, because working on such paper is a real pleasure, and I really wish that a bigger amount of publishers were more attentive to the paper quality. Again, thanks for listening and for watching, and I will see you very soon.